Hey everyone, and welcome back. Before you drift off tonight, let's talk about what might be waiting for us in the second volume of Stranger Things Season 5. Get comfortable, maybe adjust your pillow, because we're about to dive deep into Hawkins one last time, exploring the threads that could weave together the final chapter of this story we've all grown to love. So picture this. Volume 1 has just ended, probably on the biggest cliffhanger the series has ever given us. The gang is split up. The Upside Down is bleeding into Hawkins more than ever, and Vecna, well, he's likely more powerful than we've ever seen him. Volume 2 is going to pick up right in the aftermath of whatever catastrophic event closes out those first episodes, and there's so much territory to cover in what will probably be the show's final hours. Let's start by thinking about Eleven and where her journey might take her. Throughout the series, we've watched Elle grow from a girl who could barely speak into someone who understands her power, her past, and her place in the world. But there's always been this lingering question about the true extent of her abilities. We know from Season 4 that she essentially created Vecna when she sent one into the Upside Down. That moment fundamentally changed everything. It means Eleven is connected to the Upside Down's existence in a way that goes beyond just fighting its monsters. Now imagine this. What if Volume 2 reveals that Eleven doesn't just have the power to fight the Upside Down, but to unmake it entirely? Think about it. She created Vecna. She opened that first gate, even if unintentionally. Every gate that's been opened has been through her power, or a derivative of it. What if closing the Upside Down for good doesn't just require defeating Vecna, but requires Eleven to undo her original action? This could mean she'd have to sacrifice her powers, or maybe even sacrifice herself, to set things right. The emotional weight of that would be tremendous. Eleven has spent so much of her life being defined by what she can do, by her powers. Hopper loves her for who she is, not what she can do. Mike loves her the same way. But does Eleven love herself without her powers? Has she ever had the chance to just be Jane Hopper, regular teenager? Volume 2 might force her to answer that question in the most final way possible, but let's think about the mechanics of this too. If Eleven does have to unmake the Upside Down, what would that actually look like? The Upside Down isn't just another dimension sitting parallel to ours. It's described as being stuck in the past, frozen at certain moments. When Nancy went there in Season 4, it was stuck on the day Will disappeared. That's not a coincidence. Time works differently there. Or maybe it doesn't work at all. What if the Upside Down is actually a temporal anomaly, a pocket of frozen time that exists because of Eleven's powers? When she sent one there, she didn't just banish him to another place. She might have created an entire realm of existence by fracturing reality itself. To undo that, she might need to essentially rewrite that moment in time. And if she does that, what happens to everyone's memories? Do they remember the Upside Down existed? Do they remember the people they lost to it? This brings us to Max. Her fate at the end of Season 4 was one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire series. Vecna killed her, or came very close to it, and Eleven brought her back. But Max's mind is somewhere else. She's in a coma, breathing, but not present. Where is Max's consciousness right now? The most compelling theory is that Vecna still has it, that he's trapped her mind somewhere in the Upside Down, or within his own twisted mental realm. Volume 2 will almost certainly deal with getting Max back, and this is where things get really interesting from a narrative standpoint. Lucas has been sitting by her bedside, reading to her, talking to her, waiting for any sign that she's still in there. His love for Max has been one of the most genuine relationships in the show, built on mutual respect and understanding. If anyone is going to reach Max, it might be Lucas, but not in a physical way. Consider this theory. What if Lucas, in his desperation to save Max, finds a way to enter the mental plane where she's trapped? We've seen characters enter minds before. Eleven does it constantly. Billy's memories became a whole landscape that Elle explored. What if there's a way for Lucas to project himself into wherever Max is being held? Maybe with Eleven's help, maybe through some other means we haven't seen yet. He could be the anchor Max needs to find her way back, but here's where it gets complicated. What if saving Max requires someone to trade places with her? What if someone has to stay in that mental prison so that she can leave? Lucas would do it without hesitation. He'd sacrifice himself for Max in a heartbeat. But would Max want that? Would she be able to live with that choice? The beautiful tragedy of that scenario is that it would give both characters an impossible decision that defines who they are. Lucas, who has always been loyal, brave, and willing to stand up for the people he loves, even when it cost him his social status, his safety, his peace of mind. And Max, who has spent so much of her story dealing with guilt and grief, first over her stepbrother Billy, and now potentially over Lucas. How do you process being saved by someone sacrificing themselves for you? How do you move forward? Of course, there might be another way. The show has always been about the power of friendship and love, about how connection can overcome even the darkest forces. Maybe the solution isn't sacrifice. Maybe it's about Max and Lucas both refusing to give up, both fighting together, even when they're separated by the barriers between consciousness and whatever dark place Vecna has created. Maybe love isn't about sacrifice. Maybe it's about both, people choosing to survive together. Let's shift our focus to Vecna himself, because understanding his endgame is crucial to predicting how Volume 2 will unfold. We learned so much about him in Season 4. He was Henry Creel, the first child with powers, someone who saw humanity as a plague of violence and lies. He wanted to reshape the world according to his own vision. And when 11 stopped him, when she sent him to the Upside Down, he didn't die. He evolved. He became something far worse. But what is Vecna actually trying to accomplish? He's been opening gates, killing people to create those gates. And he's clearly trying to merge the Upside Down with the real world. The question is why? Is it just about destruction? Is it about revenge against 11 and the world that rejected him? Or is there something more complex driving him? Here's a theory that adds some depth to his character. What if Vecna genuinely believes he's saving the world? Hear me out. Henry Creel was deeply disturbed by what he saw in people's minds, by their lies, their violence, their contradictions. He saw his family as fake, as playing roles rather than being authentic. In his twisted worldview, human society is built on deception and causes nothing but suffering. What if he thinks that by merging the Upside Down with reality, by essentially hitting a reset button on the world, he's freeing humanity from itself? It's a classic villain motivation, sure, but it's one that makes him more than just a monster. It makes him a dark reflection of 11 in a way. They both have the power to remake the world. They were both abused and manipulated by Brenner. They both struggled with how to use their abilities and what kind of person they wanted to be. The difference is that 11 chose connection, chose to let people in despite her trauma. Henry chose isolation and dominance. He chose to see humanity as the problem rather than as people worth saving. If this is his motivation, then defeating him isn't just about being strong enough. It's about proving him wrong. It's about showing that connection, love, friendship, all the messy, complicated human emotions he rejected, are actually what make life worth living. And that's where our entire cast comes in. Think about how Volume 2 might bring everyone together for one final stand. We've got 11 and the California crew probably making their way back to Hawkins. We've got Nancy, Steve, Robin, and the others already in Hawkins dealing with the immediate aftermath of the gates opening. We've got Hopper, Joyce, and Murray, who know things about the Russian connection to all of this that might prove crucial. And we've got all the kids, now teenagers, who started this journey back in Season 1. The final battle, and there will be a final battle, needs to be more than just a fight. It needs to be a synthesis of everything these characters have learned, everyone they've become. Will's connection to the Upside Down has to matter. He's been able to sense it, to feel when it's close. That's not going to be irrelevant in the endgame. If anything, Will might be the key to understanding how to navigate the Upside Down or how to predict Vecna's movements. And speaking of Will, let's talk about his unresolved feelings, because they matter too. His love for Mike has been one of the most quietly powerful storylines in the later seasons. He gave that painting to Mike, channeling his feelings through art because he couldn't speak them directly. Volume 2 might not give us a huge romantic subplot for Will, that's probably not where the story is going, but it could give us something equally important. It could give us Will accepting himself, speaking his truth, and being accepted fully by the people he loves. Mike, for his part, has been on his own journey of understanding what it means to be in love with someone as extraordinary as 11, while also being just a regular person himself. His insecurity about not being special, about not being a hero, has defined a lot of his arc. But Mike's superpower has always been his heart. He's the one who never gave up on Will when everyone else thought he was dead. He's the one who helped Eleven understand that she was more than a weapon. His love is his strength, and Volume 2 needs to recognise that. Nancy and Steve's dynamic is another thread that needs resolution. They were the first relationship we saw on the show, young and intense and ultimately not built to last. They've both grown so much since then. Nancy has become an investigative journalist, someone who seeks truth no matter the cost. Steve has become the group's protector, the dad figure to a bunch of kids who aren't even his. He's learned that being a hero doesn't mean being the coolest person or getting the girl. It means showing up, being reliable, and putting others first. The question is whether Nancy and Steve find their way back to each other, or whether they've simply grown into people who love each other but aren't in love anymore. Jonathan represents a different path for Nancy, someone who understood her ambition, who supported her investigative instincts from the beginning. But Jonathan has been distant, both physically and emotionally. Volume 2 might force Nancy to make a choice, or it might show us that sometimes the most mature thing is to acknowledge that people can matter to you deeply without being your romantic endgame. Robin has been a revelation since she was introduced. Her friendship with Steve is one of the purest relationships on the show, totally platonic and totally essential to both of them. Her coming out scene in Season 3 was handled with such care and authenticity. Volume 2 might give us Robin finding her own courage in a different way, maybe finally pursuing Vicky, maybe just being confident in who she is, even when the world is ending. Her presence in the story is a reminder that there are many ways to be brave, many ways to love. Dustin and Susie's relationship has been adorable and also surprisingly plot relevant. She helped them with the Planck's constant crisis. She's brilliant and capable and exists in this world where the fantastical things happening in Hawkins haven't touched her life directly. What if Volume 2 brings her into the fold? What if Dustin needs her help one more time? But this time she has to see what he's been dealing with. How would she react to the upside down, to monsters, to everything that exists beyond the normal teenage experience? Erica has grown from an annoying little sister into a full member of the party. She's smart, she's brave, and she doesn't take nonsense from anyone. Volume 2 should give her a moment to shine, a moment where her particular skills and perspectives save the day. Maybe it's her logical thinking, maybe it's her willingness to speak uncomfortable truths, but she deserves her hero moment. Hopper and Joyce finally got their happy ending, or at least the beginning of one, at the end of Season 4. They've both been through so much. Hopper lost his daughter, then became a father again to 11. He survived a Russian prison. He's proven himself to be relentlessly tough, but also deeply caring. Joyce has been the heart of the show in many ways, the mother who never gives up, who always believes her kids even when everyone thinks she's crazy. Volume 2 needs to let them have some peace, even if that peace only comes after the fighting is done. Murray has been the conspiracy theorist who turned out to be right about everything. His paranoia was justified. His skills, from translation to espionage to martial arts, have proven invaluable. He's also been the voice of uncomfortable truth, the person willing to point out what everyone's thinking but not saying. In Volume 2, his knowledge of Russian operations and the global scope of what's happening might be crucial. Maybe there are still Russian scientists involved. Maybe there are still aspects of the international response to the Upside Down that we haven't seen. Let's consider the broader implications of the Upside Down breaking through into the real world. By the end of Season 4, gates were opening all over Hawkins. The town was being evacuated. The military was getting involved. This isn't a secret anymore. The world knows something catastrophic is happening. Volume 2 has to address what that means on a larger scale. Are other countries experiencing upside-down incursions? Is this a global phenomenon, or is Hawkins still the epicenter? If it's just Hawkins, why? What makes that specific location so important? We know it's where 11 opened the first gate, where the lab was located, where so much of this started, but is there something deeper? Is there something about Hawkins itself, about that place, that makes it vulnerable to this kind of dimensional breach? One theory worth exploring is that Hawkins sits on some kind of natural weak point between dimensions. Maybe the lab chose that location deliberately because Brenner or the government scientists knew there was something special about it. Maybe there's a history to Hawkins that goes back further than the lab, further than any of our characters realise. Ancient civilizations have always been part of horror lore, and while Stranger Things hasn't gone that direction explicitly, Volume 2 could reveal that the Upside Down has touched Hawkins before, maybe centuries ago, maybe leaving behind stories that became local legends. The military response is another angle to consider. Throughout the series, the government has been portrayed as either incompetent or actively malicious when it comes to dealing with the Upside Down. They created the problem through their experiments. They covered it up. They've never successfully contained it. But Volume 2 might show us a different approach. Maybe there are people in the government who genuinely want to help, who are willing to listen to Eleven and the others because they understand that these kids know more about fighting the Upside Down than any soldier or scientist. Alternatively, the military response could make things worse. Imagine troops trying to fight the Mind Flayer, or Demogorgons with conventional weapons. It would be a massacre. We've seen that guns and fire can hurt these creatures, but they're not enough. You need people who understand the Upside Down, who've fought its monsters before. You need Eleven's powers, you need Will's connection, you need the knowledge that the party has accumulated over years of surviving the impossible. There might be a scene where our characters have to convince military leaders to stand down, to let them handle this their way. It would be a powerful moment, showing how far these kids have come, how much authority and respect they've earned through their experiences. They're not children playing at being heroes anymore. They're the experts, and the adults need to recognise that. The emotional core of Volume 2 will likely focus on the concept of sacrifice and what our characters are willing to give up to save their world. Every season has dealt with this theme in some way. Eleven closed the gate in Season 2 and lost her powers temporarily. Hopper stayed behind when the machine exploded in Season 3, or so everyone thought. Billy sacrificed himself to save Eleven. Bob Newby died protecting the people he loved. Stranger Things has never shied away from real loss, from showing that heroism has a cost. So the question for Volume 2 is, who pays that cost this time? Does anyone have to die for the world to be saved? Or can the show give us an ending where everyone survives, maybe changed, maybe scarred, but alive and together? There's power in both approaches. Death gives weight to the stakes, makes the danger real, but survival, especially survival that comes at a cost that isn't death, can be just as powerful. Imagine if the ending involves Eleven losing her powers permanently to close the Upside Down forever. She lives, but she's different. She becomes just Jane Hopper, teenager with no special abilities. How would she adapt to that? Would she see it as freedom or as loss? Would her relationships change? Would she struggle with her identity? That's a rich vein of character drama that could carry emotional impact without requiring anyone to die. Or imagine if the ending involves the party being forever changed by their experiences in ways they can't fully articulate to others. They've seen things, done things, survived things that most people can't even imagine. They have trauma that will take years to process. How do you go back to normal life after that? How do you sit in a classroom and care about algebra when you've fought interdimensional monsters? That's a realistic consequence that rings true. Let's talk about some specific scenes that Volume 2 needs to deliver to feel satisfying. First, we need a reunion between Eleven and Max, where Max is actually conscious and present. Their friendship has been so important. Two girls who both struggled with their pasts, who found strength in each other. Max's letter to Elle at the end of Season 4 was heartbreaking. They need a moment where they can actually talk, where Max can thank Elle for bringing her back, where Elle can tell Max that she's stronger than Vecna, stronger than her trauma. We need a scene with the whole party together, all of them, Mike, Will, Dustin, Lucas, Eleven and Max, having a moment of normalcy even in the midst of chaos. Maybe they're planning their strategy and someone makes a joke and they all laugh. Maybe they're taking a break and they just sit together in comfortable silence. The point is to show that their bond, forged in Season 1, when they were kids looking for their friend, is still the foundation of everything they do. We need a scene between Hopper and Eleven where they talk about what comes after. They've both been so focused on survival that they haven't had time to imagine a future. What does life look like when the fighting is done? Where do they live? Does Elle go to school? Does she learn to drive? Does she get to be a normal teenager? Hopper has always wanted to give her that, to give her the childhood she deserved. Volume 2 should show us that future, even if just in a conversation, even if just as something they're both hoping for. We need a scene with Joyce and Will where she finally understands everything he's been through, everything he's been carrying. Joyce has always fought for Will, but there are parts of his experience, especially his emotional experience, that she might not fully grasp yet. A quiet moment between them where Will feels safe enough to be completely honest, where Joyce can show him that her love is unconditional, would be incredibly powerful. We need Steve to have a moment of genuine heroism that doesn't involve romantic gestures or trying to be cool. We need to see him save someone, maybe even save everyone, through sheer determination and heart. Steve's arc has been about becoming a better person, and Volume 2 should culminate that by showing us the best version of Steve Harrington, the one who's been earned through seasons of growth. We need Dustin to use his intelligence in a crucial way, figuring out something that no one else could. His mind has always been his weapon, and Volume 2 should showcase that. Maybe he deciphers something about how the Upside Down works. Maybe he figures out Vecna's weakness. Maybe he creates a device that becomes essential to their plan. Dustin deserves to be the genius who helps save the day. Now let's explore some wilder theories about how the mechanics of the final confrontation might work. What if defeating Vecna doesn't mean killing him, but rather showing him the truth about humanity that he refused to see? What if the key to winning is making him understand that connection and love are real, that they're not just lies people tell themselves? It sounds cheesy, but Stranger Things has always worn its heart on its sleeve. The power of friendship, the strength of love, these aren't weaknesses in the show's worldview. They're what make us human, and they're what give us the strength to fight. To do that, someone would have to reach Vecna on a human level, remind him that he was Henry Creel once, that he was a child who suffered and was manipulated. That person is probably 11. She's the only one who can relate to what he went through, the experiments, the isolation, the struggle to understand her powers. She made a different choice than he did, but she understands the temptation to use power to solve problems, to see herself as different from regular people. Their final confrontation might happen in a mental space, a psychic battlefield, where they're both projecting their full strength. It could be visually stunning, reality bending and shifting around them as they fight for dominance. But the turning point wouldn't be 11 overpowering him. It would be her showing him memories, showing him moments of genuine human connection that contradict his worldview. Maybe she shows him Mike's love for her, shows him how he accepted her despite everything. Maybe she shows him Hopper choosing to be her father, choosing to love her even though it was hard, even though she was difficult sometimes. Maybe she shows him Max and Lucas, shows him friendship and romance that's messy and real and worth fighting for. Maybe she shows him Will's art, shows him human creativity and expression. Maybe she shows him Joyce refusing to give up on her son, shows him maternal love that transcends logic, and maybe, just maybe, showing him all of this creates a crack in his armour, makes him hesitate, makes him question his crusade. That hesitation could be enough. Not to redeem him, because what he's done is too terrible for redemption, but to weaken him enough that 11 can finish what she started years ago. She could unmake the Upside Down, could seal him away forever, or could strip him of his powers the way she was once stripped of hers. Justice doesn't always look like death. Sometimes it looks like someone living with the consequences of their choices, powerless to do more harm. Another theory worth considering involves time travel or timeline manipulation. The show has played with time before, with the way the Upside Down seems frozen, with Will's connection to past and present. What if the final solution involves going back and preventing the Upside Down from being created in the first place? What if 11 has to travel back to the moment she sent Henry there and make a different choice? The problem with that, of course, is the butterfly effect. If the Upside Down never existed, then Will never went missing. If Will never went missing, then Mike and Lucas and Dustin never met 11. If they never met 11, then none of them would be who they are today. Their entire friendship, everything they've built together, would be erased. So even if 11 could change the past, should she? Is a world without the Upside Down worth losing all the love and connection that came from fighting it? That's a philosophical question the show might pose but wouldn't actually follow through on. Stranger Things is ultimately optimistic about human connection. It wouldn't erase its own history, wouldn't tell us that these relationships we've invested in don't matter, but it might have a character consider that option and choose not to take it. Choose to say that even with all the pain and loss, the connections they've made are worth preserving. Let's think about the epilogue, because Volume 2 will almost certainly give us some kind of look at what happens after. Maybe it's 6 months later, maybe it's a year, maybe it's even further into the future. We might see our characters trying to rebuild their lives in a world where the Upside Down is gone, but the memory of it remains. Hawkins would be changed forever. You can't have dimensional gates opening all over town and just go back to normal. There would be memorial sites, there would be government oversight, there would be people who left and never came back. But there would also be survivors, people who came together during the crisis and formed new bonds. The town would be scarred, but resilient. Our main characters might be scattered. Some might stay in Hawkins, drawn by their shared history and the need to be close to people who understand what they went through. Others might leave, seeking fresh starts or educational opportunities, or just the chance to be somewhere that doesn't remind them of trauma every day. But they would stay in touch, would have reunions, would maintain the bonds that saved their lives. Elle and Mike might be planning their future together, talking about college or jobs or whatever comes next. They're young still, and they have time to figure out who they are both together and individually. The important thing is that they survived, that they get to have a future at all. Lucas and Max might be taking things slow, both of them dealing with the aftermath of what happened. Max especially would need time to heal, both physically and mentally, but they would be together, supporting each other, proving that love can endure even the darkest experiences. Will might be coming into his own, finally comfortable with who he is, maybe even dating someone, maybe just enjoying being understood and accepted. His art could become his career path, his way of processing everything he's experienced. He would stay close with Mike and the others, but he would also be building his own life, his own identity. Dustin would probably be thriving academically, heading toward a science or engineering program at college. He'd still be the same Dustin, enthusiastic and dorky and brilliant. Maybe he and Susie would try long distance. Maybe they'd amicably decide they're better as friends. Either way, his future is bright. Hopper and Joyce would finally get their happy ending. Something domestic and quiet after years of chaos. Maybe they get married. Maybe they just live together. The point is they've earned their peace, their chance to just be a couple who cares about each other without fighting monsters or Russian conspiracies. Nancy and Jonathan, or Nancy and Steve, whoever she chooses, or if she chooses neither for now, would be pursuing their ambitions. Nancy would be investigating real stories, shining light on truth. Steve would probably be working with kids, maybe as a teacher or counsellor, finally finding his calling in taking care of people. Robin would be herself, brilliantly and authentically, maybe at college studying something esoteric and perfect for her. She'd stay in touch with Steve, their friendship one of those rare things that last forever, even when life takes you in different directions. The final scene of the series might mirror the first. Kids riding bikes, playing games, being young and alive. Maybe it's our original party, older now, but still drawn together. Maybe it's new kids in Hawkins, representing hope and continuity. The point would be that life goes on, that childhood wonder and friendship persist, even after you've seen the worst the world has to offer. Or maybe the final scene is quieter. Maybe it's just 11, sitting somewhere peaceful, watching the sunset, or reading a book, or doing something completely ordinary. And she smiles, genuinely smiles, because she's free. Free from Brenner, free from the lab, free from fighting, free to just be Jane. That would be a powerful ending too, a reminder that after all the battles, the greatest victory is simply being allowed to exist as yourself. There are so many threads to tie up, so many character arcs to complete. Volume 2 has a monumental task ahead of it, concluding a story that has captivated audiences for years. The key will be balancing spectacle with emotion, giving us the big moments and battles we expect while also delivering the character beats that make us care about those battles in the first place. The show has always understood that the monsters are scary, but what really terrifies us is the thought of losing the people we love. Every season has been about fighting to protect your friends, your family, your home. Volume 2 will be no different. It will be about our characters making one last stand, not because they're fearless, but because they refuse to let fear win. They refuse to let Vecna take away their world, their connections, their hope. And maybe that's the ultimate message of Stranger Things, the thing that Volume 2 needs to drive home. Terrible things happen, people get hurt, the world can be scary and unfair and seemingly impossible to navigate, but you don't face it alone. You face it with your friends by your side, with people who know you and accept you and will fight for you just as hard as you fight for them. That's not naive. That's not childish. That's the truth that Henry Creel rejected and that our heroes embrace. When the dust settles and the final battle is over, what we'll remember isn't just who won or how they won. We'll remember the moments between people, the looks exchanged, the words spoken, the hands held. We'll remember Mike telling Elle he loves her, not because it makes him special, but because she makes him want to be better. We'll remember Lucas refusing to leave Max's side even when there's nothing he can do. We'll remember Will finding the courage to be himself. We'll remember Dustin making everyone laugh even when things seem hopeless. We'll remember Hopper becoming a father again and choosing love over isolation. We'll remember Joyce's fierce maternal instinct that never wavers. We'll remember Nancy's determination to uncover truth. We'll remember Steve's transformation from bully to babysitter to hero. We'll remember Robin's authenticity. We'll remember Erica's sass and bravery. These are the things that matter, the things worth fighting for. And Volume 2, in its final hours, will remind us of that. It will give us spectacle and horror and triumph, but more importantly, it will give us heart. It will show us characters we've grown to love over 5 seasons, getting the ending they deserve, whatever that ending might be. So as we wait for Volume 2 to arrive, as we speculate and theorise and imagine all the possible ways this story could conclude, let's remember why we fell in love with Stranger Things in the first place. It wasn't just the monsters or the mysteries or the 80s nostalgia. It was the friendships, the found families, the idea that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they have something worth fighting for. Volume 2 will deliver on that promise. It will show us our heroes facing their greatest challenge, digging deeper than they ever have before, and finding the strength to save their world one more time. And when it's over, when we say goodbye to Hawkins and the Upside Down and all these characters who have become like friends to us, we'll carry those lessons with us. We'll remember that love is stronger than fear, that connection is more powerful than isolation, and that even in the darkest times, there's always hope if you're willing to fight for it. The theory crafting is fun, the speculation keeps us engaged, but what we're really waiting for is the emotional payoff. We want to see these characters triumph. We want to see them survive. We want to see them happy. And Volume 2, if it does its job right, will give us that. It will give us an ending that honours everything that came before, while also providing closure and hope for whatever comes after. So get comfortable, close your eyes if you need to, and imagine the best possible version of how this story ends. Imagine 11. Finding peace. Imagine the party staying friends forever. Imagine Hawkins rebuilding. Imagine a future where the Upside Down is just a memory and the people who fought it get to live normal, beautiful, boring lives. That's what we're all hoping for. That's what Volume 2 should deliver. Not just victory, but happiness. Not just survival, but joy. Not just an ending, but a new beginning for everyone who earned it. The beauty of storytelling is that it reflects our own lives back at us, shows us versions of struggles we all face, even if most of us will never fight actual monsters. The Upside Down is a metaphor for trauma, for the dark things we carry with us. Vecna is every voice that tells us we're not good enough, that we're broken, that we should give up. And our heroes, these kids from Hawkins, they're all of us trying to survive, trying to find meaning, trying to protect the people and things we love. When Volume 2 shows us these characters overcoming their demons, literally and figuratively, it's showing us that we can overcome ours too. When it shows us that connection matters, that love is real, that friendship can see you through the darkest times, it's reminding us of truths we sometimes forget in our own lives. That's the power of a story like Stranger Things, and that's why its ending matters so much. We've invested years in these characters, watched them grow from children into young adults, seen them face impossible odds again and again. We've cried with them, cheered for them, feared for them. They've become real to us in the way that great characters do. So yes, we want theories about how the plot will resolve, about who will make it and what the final battle will look like. But more than that, we want to know that these people we've cared about will be okay, that their story will end in a way that honours their journey. Volume 2 carries the weight of those expectations, and while no ending can satisfy everyone, the best endings are the ones that feel true to the characters and themes that have been established. Stranger Things has always been about heart triumphing over darkness. It's been about ordinary, people choosing to be extraordinary. It's been about love in all its forms, romantic and platonic and familial and everything in between. If Volume 2 stays true to those themes, if it gives us character moments that resonate emotionally while also delivering the plot resolution we need, then it will succeed. It will give us an ending we can hold on to, one that feels earned and satisfying and complete. And maybe, when it's all over, we'll be sad to say goodbye, but we'll also be grateful that we got to take this journey, that we got to spend time in Hawkins, that we got to know these characters and care about their fates. That's what good storytelling does. It creates a world you don't want to leave, characters you don't want to say goodbye to, and moments that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Volume 2 has the opportunity to give us all of that and more. Let's dive deeper into some of the more intricate theories about how the mythology of the show might resolve. The Mind Flayer has been this looming presence since Season 2, this massive entity that seems to be the true power behind the Upside Down. But Season 4 complicated that by revealing Vecna and suggesting that maybe he's been controlling the Mind Flayer all along, that he shaped it into what it is. This raises fascinating questions about the hierarchy of power in the Upside Down. Is the Mind Flayer truly subordinate to Vecna, or does it have its own agenda? What if Volume 2 reveals that the Mind Flayer has been using Vecna just as much as Vecna has been using it? What if there's a cosmic horror element here, where the Mind Flayer is something far older and more alien than even Vecna understands? He might think he's in control, might believe he shaped this entity to his will, but what if he's wrong? Imagine a scenario where Vecna's plan succeeds, where he merges the dimensions and brings the Upside Down into reality, but then the Mind Flayer turns on him. Imagine our heroes having to witness Vecna, their greatest enemy, being consumed or discarded by something even worse. It would be a horrifying escalation, a reminder that there are forces in the universe beyond human comprehension, beyond even superhuman comprehension. And it would force an interesting question. Do our heroes help Vecna against the Mind Flayer, forming a temporary alliance against a greater threat? That kind of twist would be very much in line with how Stranger Things operates. The show loves to complicate its villains, to show that evil isn't always simple or straightforward. We saw it with Billy, who was a genuine threat and a bad person in many ways, but who also had his own trauma and ultimately chose to sacrifice himself. We saw it with Dr. Brenner, who was abusive and manipulative, but who also seemed to genuinely believe he cared about his test subjects in his own twisted way. Vecna is presented as irredeemable, and maybe he is, but showing him as fallible, as someone who miscalculated and unleashed something he can't control, would add depth to the final conflict. It would also give Eleven and the others a different kind of victory. They wouldn't just be defeating Vecna through superior power or tactics, they'd be showing him that his worldview was flawed from the start, that his attempt to reshape reality according to his vision was doomed because he never understood the forces he was playing with. Now let's talk about the Russians, because their involvement in the Stranger Things mythology has been significant, and there are still threads there that need resolution. We know they were trying to open their own gate to the Upside Down, that they had demogorgons and particles from the Upside Down in their facility. We know they captured Hopper and put him in a prison camp, but what's their end game? What do they want with the Upside Down? During the Cold War era, that much of Stranger Things is set in, the idea of weaponizing the Upside Down would be extremely tempting to any nation's military. Imagine having access to demogorgons as biological weapons, or being able to open gates behind enemy lines. The tactical applications would be enormous. But we've also seen how impossible the Upside Down is to control. Every attempt to harness it has resulted in catastrophe. Volume 2 might show us the consequences of the Russian experiments coming home to roost. Maybe they opened gates in Russia, Maybe they have their own Vecna situation developing. Maybe part of the solution to the Hawkins crisis involves international cooperation, sharing information and resources to fight a threat that doesn't care about national borders. That would be a very contemporary message, the idea that some problems are too big for any one nation to solve alone. Murray's knowledge of Russian language and culture, his spy skills, and his connections might become crucial here. He could be the bridge between American and Russian forces, the person who can navigate both sides and get them to work together. It would give his character a satisfying arc, taking him from paranoid conspiracy theorist to someone whose unique skills and perspectives save the world. There's also the question of whether there are other people like 11 out there. Brenner's program created multiple test subjects. We met some of them in Season 4 in 11's Memories of the Lab, but were there other facilities, other Brenners running similar experiments? The government's investment in this program suggests it was widespread, that there might be other powered individuals scattered around the world. What if Volume 2 introduces us to another survivor of these experiments who has been living in hiding, trying to be normal, but who gets drawn into the final conflict? They could be someone who chose differently than 11, someone who suppressed their powers and tried to pretend they were just a regular person. Meeting 11, seeing someone who embraced what she is, could be transformative for them. And their powers, whatever they might be, could provide a crucial advantage in the final battle. Or maybe the twist is darker. Maybe there's another survivor who sided with Vecna, who shares his nihilistic worldview and thinks humanity deserves to be wiped out. That would give us another powered antagonist, someone who could challenge 11 in ways that Vecna can't, because they understand her specifically. They grew up in the same system, went through the same trauma, but came to opposite conclusions about what that trauma means. Let's explore the theme of memory and identity that's been woven throughout the series. The upside down being stuck in the past, frozen at significant moments, suggests that memory is somehow fundamental to how it works. Will's memories of his time there have haunted him. 11's memories of the lab have defined so much of who she is. Max's memories, her guilt over Billy, were what Vecna exploited to hurt her. What if the key to defeating the upside down involves confronting and processing memories? What if our characters have to literally journey through their own traumatic memories, facing them head-on in order to break Vecna's hold? It would be a psychological battle as much as a physical one. Each character would have to face their worst moment, their deepest fear, their most painful memory, and choose to move forward anyway. For Will, it might be reliving his time in the Upside Down, but this time not as a victim. This time he'd go through it knowing he survived, knowing he's stronger than what happened to him. For 11, it might be facing her memories of Brenner, of the lab, of every time she was made to feel like a weapon rather than a person. For Max, it's clearly her guilt over Billy, her complicated feelings about his death. For Mike, it might be his fears of inadequacy, his worry that he's not special enough. Each character processing their trauma and coming out stronger would be a powerful way to show growth and healing. And it would tie into the larger theme of the show that facing darkness, whether external or internal, is how you overcome it. Running from your problems, hiding from your pain, only gives them power over you. But confronting them with the support of people who care about you, that's how you heal. This could also tie into Max's rescue. If she's trapped in some kind of memory loop or psychological prison created by Vecna, then the way to save her might be to enter that space and help her confront whatever's keeping her trapped. It wouldn't be 11 alone doing the saving. It would be all of her friends, each contributing their own strength, their own memories of Max, their own love for her. Together, they'd give her the anchor she needs to find her way back. The emotional climax of Volume 2 might not be the big battle with Vecna. It might be a quiet moment after, where everyone is together, and they're all just breathing, just existing in the relief of survival. No words needed, just presence. Just the understanding that they made it, that they're still here, that whatever comes next, they'll face it together like they always have. But before we get to that point, there's still the question of how the actual confrontation with Vecna unfolds. We've talked about psychological warfare, about proving him wrong, about the mind flayer, potentially complicating things. But there's also the practical question of how you fight someone with his level of power. He can kill people from a distance. He can invade minds. He's survived injuries that would kill anyone else. How do you even begin to approach defeating him? One theory is that the solution involves multiple fronts. While 11 faces him in a mental battle, others attack him physically in the Upside Down. While some characters work to close the gates, others defend them against the creatures pouring through. It would require precise coordination, everyone playing their part perfectly. One mistake, one person failing their task, and the whole plan collapses. This is where the show can showcase how every character, powered or not, is essential. 11 might be the heavy hitter, but she can't be everywhere at once. She needs Lucas and Erica holding a position. She needs Dustin figuring out the technical aspects of gate closure. She needs Steve and Nancy and Robin fighting off Demogorgons. She needs Will using his connection to the Upside Down to provide intelligence. She needs Mike coordinating everyone, keeping the plan on track, being the strategist he's always been. The beauty of an ensemble cast is that everyone can have their hero moment. Volume 2 should give us a sequence where we cut between different characters, each facing their own impossible challenge, each rising to the occasion. Maybe Dustin is trapped and has to MacGyver his way out using random materials. Maybe Steve is injured but keeps fighting anyway because people are counting on him. Maybe Robin has to make a split-second decision that saves everyone. Maybe Erica has to be brave in a way that terrifies her, but she does it anyway. These individual moments of heroism, cut together with an epic score, building to a crescendo as the plan comes together and Vecna starts to lose. That's the kind of sequence that would be incredibly satisfying to watch. It would show that the power of the group, their diversity of skills and perspectives, is what makes them stronger than any individual, no matter how powerful. And then there's the aftermath. Assuming our heroes win, assuming they close the Upside Down and defeat Vecna and save Max and accomplish all the things they need to accomplish, what does the world look like the next day? Hawkins would be in ruins. There would be casualties, destruction, trauma on a massive scale. The town would need to rebuild, and not just physically. Volume 2 might show us the beginning of that rebuilding process. We might see the community coming together, people helping. Their neighbours, strangers becoming friends because they survived something terrible together. We might see the government actually doing something helpful for once, providing resources and support. We might see memorials for the people who didn't make it, acknowledging the cost of what happened. Our main characters would be dealing with their own recovery. They'd need therapy, probably. They'd need time to process. They'd need to figure out how to reintegrate into normal life when they've been fundamentally changed by their experiences. Some of them might struggle with PTSD. Some might have nightmares. Some might become hypervigilant, always watching for the next threat. But they'd also have each other, and that would make all the difference. They'd have people who understand what they went through, who don't need explanations or justifications. They'd have shared experiences that bonded them in ways that can't be broken. And slowly, with support and time and effort, they'd heal. Not completely, maybe. You don't go through what they've gone through and come out unchanged, but they'd find a way to live with what happened, to integrate it into their story without letting it define them entirely. There's something profoundly hopeful about that message. The show could easily go dark, could say that trauma breaks people irreparably. But that wouldn't be true to the spirit of Stranger Things. This is a show that believes in resilience, in the human capacity to endure and recover and find joy again, even after terrible things happen. Volume 2 should reinforce that message, should show us that, yes, bad things happen, but good people can survive them and build good lives anyway. Let's talk about some of the smaller character relationships that deserve resolution. Dustin and Steve's friendship has been one of the most endearing aspects of the later seasons. Steve became the older brother Dustin never had, and Dustin gave Steve a sense of purpose beyond his romantic life. Volume 2 should give them a moment that acknowledges how important they are to each other. Maybe Steve telling Dustin how proud he is of him, or Dustin thanking Steve for always being there. Nancy and Jonathan's relationship has been strained by distance and different priorities. If they're going to end up together, Volume 2 needs to show them reconnecting, remembering why they fell in love in the first place. If they're going to break up, it should be handled maturely, with both of them acknowledging that they've grown in different directions, and that's okay. Either way, the resolution should feel honest and earned. Joyce and Murray's friendship is another underrated relationship. They've been through Russian prisons and conspiracies together. They understand each other in ways that most people don't understand either of them. A scene where they just talk, maybe share a drink, and acknowledge the strange journey they've been on together would be satisfying. Hopper and Murray also have an interesting dynamic. They started as antagonists, with Murray thinking Hopper was part of the conspiracy and Hopper finding Murray annoying, but they've developed a grudging respect. Volume 2 could show that evolving into actual friendship, two gruff guys who'd never admit they care about each other, but who absolutely do. Will and Jonathan's brother relationship deserves more screen time too. Jonathan has always been protective of Will, has always believed him and supported him. But as they've gotten older, that dynamic has shifted. Will doesn't need protection as much as he needs understanding. A conversation where Jonathan tells Will he's proud of who he's becoming, where Will thanks Jonathan for always being in his corner, would be really meaningful. And we can't forget about the parents. Karen Wheeler has been mostly oblivious to what her kids are going through, but she clearly loves them. Ted Wheeler is, well, Ted. But even he might have a moment of awareness, of stepping up when his family needs him. It would be funny and touching if Ted, of all people, did something unexpectedly heroic or supportive at a crucial moment. The Byers family dynamics are so rich. Joyce, Jonathan and Will have been through so much together, and now they have Eleven and Hopper joining their family unit. Volume 2 could show us what that blended family looks like, how they navigate the complications of bringing everyone together. It won't be perfect or easy, but it will be full of love, and that's what matters. Now let's consider some of the visual and atmospheric elements that Volume 2 should deliver. Stranger Things has always excelled at creating memorable, striking imagery. The Upside Down with its dark sky and floating particles, the Mind Flayer's massive shadow form looming over the town, Vecna's lair with its twisted architecture and organic, disturbing details. Volume 2 needs to top all of that. Imagine the final battle taking place in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with the camera cutting between the real world and the Upside Down, showing how they're starting to merge. The sky could be split, half normal and half storm dark. Buildings could be flickering between their normal state and their upside down versions. Reality itself could be unstable, creating this nightmarish landscape where nothing is certain. Eleven's confrontation with Vecna could take place in a purely mental realm, a space where both of them have unlimited power to shape their surroundings. It could be a kaleidoscope of imagery, memories and fears and hopes all swirling together. The visuals could be abstract and dreamlike, showing the psychological nature of their battle. When Eleven starts winning, the space could become brighter, more colourful. When Vecna pushes back, it could darken and distort. The moment when the Upside Down is finally sealed could be visually spectacular. Gates closing all over Hawkins, light pushing back darkness, the sky returning to normal. Maybe there's a wave of energy that spreads out from wherever Eleven is, washing over everything and setting it right. People all over town could stop what they're doing and look up, feeling that something fundamental has changed, that the nightmare is over, and then the silence. After seasons of tension and horror and constant danger, imagine a scene of just quiet. No monsters, no alarms, no screaming, just the ordinary sounds of a town at peace. Birds chirping, wind rustling leaves, distant traffic. Our characters standing together, exhausted and hurt, but alive, just listening to that normal, beautiful silence. The score would be crucial here too. Stranger Things has one of the most iconic theme songs in recent television, that synth-heavy retro sound that immediately sets the tone. Volume 2's final episodes would need music that honours that while also providing emotional depth for the character moments. Imagine a reprise of the main theme, but slower, more melancholic, playing over the epilogue as we see our characters moving forward with their lives. There could be callbacks to earlier seasons too, musical cues that remind us of specific moments from the journey. When Mike and Eleven have their final scene together, maybe we hear echoes of themes from their season 1 moments. When the whole party is together, maybe we hear something that reminds us of them playing Dungeons and Dragons in Mike's basement all those years ago. These little touches would create a sense of the story coming full circle. Let's think about what the final line of dialogue in the series should be. It's a significant choice, the last words that will ever be spoken in this story. It should be something that encapsulates the themes, that feels both conclusive and hopeful. Maybe it's 11 saying something simple about being ready for whatever comes next. Maybe it's Mike making a callback to the first season. Maybe it's Dustin being his usual nerdy self, or Lucas being loyal, or Will being quietly strong, or maybe the final line should go to someone unexpected. Maybe it's Erica with a sassy comment that makes everyone laugh. Maybe it's Hopper telling Joyce he loves her. Maybe it's Steve making a dad joke to the kids. The point is, whoever gets the last word should feel right, should feel earned by their journey throughout the series. Actually, you know what would be perfect? If the final line mirrored the very first line of the series. The show opened with the boys playing Dungeons and Dragons, with Mike as the DM narrating their adventure. What if the series ends the same way, with them playing again, older and changed, but still friends, still coming together around that table? And Mike's last line as DM could be something about their characters facing a new adventure, implying that life goes on, that there are always new challenges and new stories, but you face them together. That would be beautiful symmetry, bringing the show back to its roots while also showing growth. The game that was once an escape from their normal lives would now be an escape from the extraordinary, traumatic things they've experienced. They'd be playing for fun, for connection, because they choose to, not because they're children anymore, but because they're friends who love this thing they do together. Speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, the game has been such a clever narrative device throughout the series. The monsters and concepts from D&D have provided a framework for understanding the Upside Down. Calling the Demogorgon a Demogorgon gave them a way to talk about it, to strategize against it. Volume 2 could use this one more time, with the party applying lessons from their campaigns to their real battle. Maybe there's a scene where they're planning their attack on Vecna, and Dustin starts talking about it in D&D terms, about action economy and saving throws, and how to optimize their approach. And the others join in, falling into that familiar language, and it helps them feel less overwhelmed. Because if they can treat it like a game, like something they understand, then maybe it's not quite so terrifying. Obviously they know it's real and dangerous, but that framework helps them cope. The dichotomy between childhood and adulthood has been a major theme throughout the series. Our characters started as kids, and now they're teenagers about to enter adulthood. They've had to grow up fast because of the things they've faced, but they've also tried to hold on to their childhood, their innocence. Volume 2 should address this tension, should show them finding a balance between the maturity their experiences have forced on them and the playfulness and wonder they don't want to lose, because that's a universal experience, right? We all have to grow up, have to face responsibilities and disappointments and the harsh realities of the world, but we don't have to lose everything that made childhood special. We can still find joy, still play, still imagine, still connect with others in that open, trusting way that kids do naturally. Growing up doesn't mean becoming cynical or closed off. It means integrating your experiences, learning from them, but not letting them harden you. Our characters, especially 11, represent that beautifully. She's had the least normal childhood of anyone, and yet she's fought so hard to have normal experiences, to go to school and have friends and fall in love, and all the things teenagers should get to do. Volume 2 should give her that, should show her succeeding in being just a girl, not a superhero, not a weapon, just Jane Hopper living her life. That might be the most revolutionary ending the show could give us. Not 11 becoming more powerful, not her ascending to some higher plane of existence, but her becoming normal, her losing her powers, or choosing to never use them again, and being completely okay with that because she's discovered that her worth isn't tied to what she can do. It's tied to who she is, to the connections she's made, to the love she's given and received. And if 11 can find peace in ordinariness after everything she's been through, that's a message everyone can take to heart. You don't have to be special or extraordinary to matter. You don't have to have powers or do incredible things to be worthy of love and happiness. You just have to be yourself, to treat people with kindness, to show up for the people who matter to you. That's enough. That's everything. Of course, there's a part of us that wants 11 to keep her powers, to remain this badass character who can throw people across rooms with her mind. And maybe she does. Maybe she finds a way to have both, to be powerful and normal, to accept all aspects of herself. that would be okay too. The important thing is that the choice is hers, that she's not defined by what others expect from her but by what she wants for herself. The same goes for all our characters. Volume 2 should show them making choices about their futures, about who they want to be now that the fighting is done. Mike might choose to pursue writing, to tell stories. Will is clearly headed toward art. Lucas could go into sports, or maybe something completely different. Dustin will probably do something science related. But whatever they choose, it should feel authentic to who they've become. Nancy's ambition and intelligence point toward journalism or investigation, something where she can use her skills to make a difference. Steve, after seasons of growth, might find his calling in education or working with kids. Robin will probably end up doing something that utilizes her brilliant, quirky mind. Jonathan could pursue for photography professionally, capturing truth through his lens the way he's always done. The adults too. Hopper might return to being a sheriff, or he might be done with that life and want something quieter. Joyce deserves to find some stability, some peace, maybe running a small business or just focusing on her family. Murray might write a book about his experiences, finally getting validation for all his conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. These future paths don't all need to be shown explicitly. The epilogue could be subtle, just hints about where people are headed, but giving us some sense that these characters have lives beyond the story we've been watching, that they're continuing on and finding new purposes and dreams that would provide a satisfying sense of closure. Volume 2 also needs to address the elephant in the room, which is, how do you keep something like the Upside Down secret? After gates have opened all over town and the military got involved, the answer is probably that you can't. Not entirely. Maybe the epilogue shows us a world where the existence of other dimensions is public knowledge now. Maybe there are scientists studying upside-down particles. Maybe there are new regulations and protocols. Maybe Hawkins becomes famous. People coming to see where it all happened. That could be bittersweet for our characters. They saved the world, but they can't really talk about it openly because it would make them celebrities or targets. Or maybe they do go public. Maybe they testify before Congress or write books or become advocates for taking interdimensional threats seriously. That would be an interesting path, showing them using their experiences to try to prevent anything like this from happening again. But honestly, the most likely scenario is that life just goes on. After the immediate crisis, after the cleanup and the funerals and the memorials, people would start returning to their normal routines. They'd rebuild, they'd cope, they'd find ways to move forward, because that's what humans do, and our characters would be part of that. Just people living in a town that went through something terrible and came out the other side. There's power in that kind of ending too, in the mundane reality of survival. Not everything needs to be dramatic or earth-shattering. Sometimes the most meaningful moments are quiet ones, ordinary ones. The kind that don't make good television but that make up actual lives. Volume 2 could give us some of that, could show us that after you save the world, you still have to do your laundry and go to school and have awkward conversations and deal with all the regular stuff that being human entails. Maybe that's the ultimate defeat of Vecna's philosophy. He thought humanity was fundamentally broken, that our ordinary lives were meaningless and our connections were lies. But showing our characters embracing ordinary life after extraordinary trauma, showing them finding meaning and joy in simple things, that proves him wrong more completely than any psychic battle could. Because the ordinary is where real life happens. The extraordinary is just what tests us, what reveals who we really are, and who are our characters, really. They're people who choose connection over isolation, who choose hope over despair, who choose love over fear. They're people who've seen the worst the universe has to offer and decided that life is still worth living, that people are still worth fighting for, that tomorrow is worth believing in. That's the heart of Stranger Things, and that's what Volume 2 needs to honour above all else. As we drift off thinking about all these possibilities, all these theories about how the story might end, it's worth remembering that no matter what happens, we've already gotten something valuable from this show. We've gotten characters who feel real, who we care about, who've made us laugh and cry and cheer. We've gotten a story about friendship that's genuine and powerful. We've gotten to spend time in a world that, despite its monsters and terrors, has a fundamental optimism about human nature. Volume 2 will give us closure, will answer our questions, will show us how it all ends. But the journey has been the real gift, these years of speculation and excitement, of waiting for new seasons, of discussing theories with friends, of being part of a community that loves this story. Whatever happens in those final episodes, we'll always have those memories of experiencing this show and being moved by it. So let your mind wander now through the possibilities. Imagine your ideal ending. See 11 happy. See the party together. See Hawkins at peace. See all these characters you've grown to love getting the endings they deserve. Let's think more deeply about some of the lingering mysteries that Volume 2 absolutely needs to address. One of the biggest questions hanging over the series is the true nature of Hawkins' lab and whether there are still secrets buried there that we haven't discovered. The lab was supposedly shut down after Season 1, but we know that government facilities like that don't just disappear. There are backup sites, redundant programs, classified files that even the main researchers don't know about. What if Volume 2 reveals that there was another level to the lab, something deeper underground that even Brenner didn't have full access to? What if the original experiments with children were just one branch of a much larger program exploring the possibilities of psychic powers and dimensional travel? Maybe there were parallel experiments happening simultaneously, different approaches to achieving the same goal of weaponizing the supernatural. This could introduce us to other survivors we haven't met yet, people who are part of different test groups with different abilities. Maybe someone who can see the future or manipulate matter in ways different from Eleven's telekinesis, or communicate with the creatures of the Upside Down rather than just fighting them. These abilities could provide crucial advantages in the final battle, tools that our heroes didn't know they had access to. The government's role in all of this has always been murky. Are they evil, incompetent, just misguided? Volume 2 could finally give us a clear picture of the chain of command, showing us who knew what and when. Maybe there's a sympathetic government official who's been trying to shut down these programs from the inside, who becomes an ally to our heroes. Or maybe the corruption goes higher than we thought, all the way to the top levels of federal government. There's also the international angle to consider more thoroughly. If the United States was conducting these experiments, were other countries doing the same? The Soviet Union obviously was, as we saw with their attempt to open a gate. But what about other nations? Were there programs in Europe, in Asia, in other parts of the world? And if so, are there other upside-down incursions happening globally that we just haven't heard about because our story has been focused on Hawkins? Volume 2 could expand the scope to show us that Hawkins isn't unique, that there are other hotspots around the world where the barrier between dimensions is thin. Our characters might have to coordinate with international teams, sharing information and strategies. It would make the threat feel even bigger, while also showing that humans are capable of cooperation when faced with existential danger. Imagine a scene where Eleven is on a video call with other powered individuals from around the world, all of them strategizing together about how to close the gates simultaneously. You'd have language barriers, cultural differences, but also a shared understanding of what it's like to have these abilities, to be different, to carry this responsibility. It would be a powerful moment of global unity in the face of darkness. Now let's dig deeper into the mythology of the Upside Down itself. We've established that it seems to be frozen in time, stuck at specific moments. But why? What's the mechanism behind that? One theory is that the Upside Down isn't actually a separate dimension at all, but rather an echo or shadow of our world, created by the trauma of the gate opening. It's like a scar in reality, a place where time broke and now exists in this liminal state. If that's true, then the Upside Down might contain echoes of everyone who's ever been taken there. Bob Newby, Barb Holland, all the other victims we saw and didn't see, their consciousnesses might still exist in some form in that frozen realm. They're not alive in any meaningful sense, but they're not completely gone either. They're trapped in the moment of their deaths, reliving it eternally, or existing in some kind of suspended state. That's a horrifying concept, but it also opens up narrative possibilities. What if part of saving the world involves freeing those trapped souls? What if closing the Upside Down permanently means finally letting them rest? There could be a deeply emotional sequence where our characters encounter the echoes of people they've lost, where they get to say goodbye properly. where they can offer peace to those who've been suffering in that dark place. Imagine Eleven encountering an echo of Brenner and having to decide whether to help him find peace or let him suffer for what he did to her and the other children. That would be a powerful test of her character, showing whether she can extend compassion even to someone who hurt her so deeply. Or imagine Nancy finding Barb's echo and finally being able to apologise, to tell her friend that she's never forgotten her, that her death mattered. These moments would add emotional weight to the supernatural mechanics of the story. It's not just about closing gates and defeating monsters. It's about healing, about processing grief, about finding closure for trauma that's been carrying forward through multiple seasons. The Upside Down is a physical manifestation of unresolved pain, and defeating it requires resolving that pain, both individually and collectively. Let's also consider the role that Hawkins itself plays in all of this. The town has been through so much, and there's been a lot of focus on specific locations within it. The lab, obviously, the buyer's house, the quarry, Lover's Lake, Skull Rock. These places have become significant, charged with meaning, through the events that happened there. What if there's a reason for that? What if Hawkins has some kind of spiritual or supernatural significance that predates the lab? Maybe the lab was built there because government scientists detected anomalies in the area, strange readings that suggested the barrier between worlds was thinner there. Maybe there are Native American legends about the area, stories of people disappearing or encountering strange creatures, stories that were dismissed as myths, but that were actually describing upside-down incursions that happened centuries ago. Volume 2 could reveal that this has been happening in cycles, that the Upside Down has been trying to break through in that location for a very long time. If that's the case, then maybe defeating it isn't about destroying the Upside Down entirely, which might not even be possible. Maybe it's about strengthening the barrier, about finding a way to keep the dimensions separate permanently. That could involve some kind of ritual or sacrifice, something that binds the gate closed in a way that can't be undone. And maybe that's where Eleven's choice comes in, whether she's willing to permanently use her power to seal herself as a living lock on the gate. That would be a bittersweet ending. She'd be alive, but she'd be forever tied to Hawkins, unable to leave without risking the barrier weakening. She'd have to choose between her own freedom and the safety of the world. It's the kind of impossible choice that defines a hero, and it would show how much she's grown from the scared girl we met in Season 1. She'd be choosing to be a guardian, accepting a burden that no one should have to carry but that she takes on willingly, because that's who she is. Of course, maybe there's a way around that. Maybe the solution involves distributing the burden, having multiple people share the responsibility of maintaining the barrier. 11 and any other powered individuals who survived the programs could form a network, each of them contributing a portion of their strength to keep the dimensions separate. They'd be linked psychically, able to feel each other's presence, supporting one another across distances. That would give us a vision of the future, where 11 isn't alone in her power anymore. She has peers, people who understand what it's like to be different, to carry abilities that set you apart. They could form a kind of informal organisation, the first line of defence against any future supernatural threats. And while they'd have to be vigilant, they wouldn't have to fight alone. They'd have each other, just like 11 has her friends. Let's talk more about the specific creatures of the Upside Down and what Volume 2 might reveal about them. We've seen Demogorgons, Demodogs, the Mind Flayer, and various vines and particles. But what if there's a whole ecosystem there that we haven't seen yet? What if the Upside Down is teeming with life? Just life that's alien and hostile to us. Maybe there are creatures that haven't come through the gates yet. Things that are even more dangerous than what we've encountered. Volume 2 could show us deeper explorations of the Upside Down. Our characters venturing into areas that no one's been to before. They might discover ruins there, structures that suggest the Upside Down was once inhabited by something intelligent. Maybe there was a civilization there that fell, that was consumed by the Mind Flayer, or destroyed by some other catastrophe. Their ruins could contain clues about how to defeat the current threat, ancient knowledge that's been waiting for someone to find it. That would add a layer of cosmic horror to the story. The idea that the Upside Down isn't just an empty dimension, but a graveyard of previous attempts at civilization. It would suggest that the Mind Flayer has done this before, has consumed other worlds before setting its sights on ours, Our heroes wouldn't just be fighting for Earth, they'd be fighting to prevent humanity from becoming another extinct species in the Upside Down's collection of trophies. The visual design of these deeper areas of the Upside Down could be spectacular. Instead of just dark mirrors of Hawkins, we could see alien landscapes, impossible geometry, structures that defy physics. Maybe there are areas where gravity works differently, where time flows backwards, where the very laws of nature are different from what we're used to. Navigating these areas would require our characters to think creatively, to adapt to environments that challenge everything they know about how the world works. And maybe in these deep places they find something unexpected. Not just monsters and danger, but beauty. Maybe there are bioluminescent forests or crystalline structures that sing when the wind passes through them, or pools of liquid that reflect not what is, but what could be. The Upside Down doesn't have to be entirely horrible. It can be alien, strange, unsettling, but also awe-inspiring in its own way. That complexity would make the decision about whether to destroy it or just seal it away more nuanced. Because here's a question worth considering. Does the Upside Down have a right to exist? If it's a living dimension with its own ecosystem, its own forms of life, is it ethical to destroy it just because it's dangerous to us? Or should the goal be peaceful separation, finding a way for both dimensions to exist without interfering with each other? These are the kind of moral questions that science fiction does best, and Stranger Things has always had a philosophical undercurrent beneath its horror and action. Maybe Eleven has to grapple with this. She created Vecna's connection to the Upside Down, and in a sense, she's responsible for what it's become. But that doesn't mean she has the right to destroy it. Maybe the solution is more about boundaries than annihilation, about teaching the Upside Down, if it can be taught, that our world is off limits. Maybe there's a way to communicate with the Mind Flayer, to negotiate a truce. That's probably too optimistic for the story we've been watching, but it's interesting to think about. More likely, Volume 2 will show us that some threats can't be reasoned with, that sometimes the only option is to fight. But even then, there can be nuance in how that fight is conducted, in what happens afterwards, in how the victors treat their victory. Let's shift gears and talk about the soundtrack and musical choices that Volume 2 should include. Stranger Things has always had exceptional music supervision, using period-appropriate songs that comment on the action or reveal character emotions. From Should I Stay or Should I Go? Being Will's song to Running Up That Hill. Being central to Max's story, the music has been a character in its own right. Volume 2 needs to deliver some iconic musical moments that match or exceed what's come before. Maybe there's a scene where the characters are preparing for the final battle and a song comes on the radio that's perfect for the moment, that captures the mixture of fear and determination they're all feeling. Maybe it's something upbeat and defiant, or maybe it's something melancholic and beautiful. The key is that it should feel earned, should resonate with the emotional state of the characters and the audience. There should definitely be a callback to earlier musical moments. Maybe Should I Stay or Should I Go? Plays again during a crucial Will scene, reminding us of how far he's come from the scared kid who disappeared in Season 1. Maybe we hear Heroes by David Bowie, which played during the snowball, during a moment where our characters are being heroic in their own right. These echoes of earlier seasons would create a sense of the story coming full circle, and the original score by Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein needs to shine. Their synth-heavy compositions have been essential to the show's atmosphere. Volume 2 should give us new variations on familiar themes, building to some kind of ultimate version of the main theme that plays during the climax. Imagine the intensity of the music matching the intensity of the action, driving the emotional experience for viewers, making the hair stand up on the back of your neck. There should also be quiet moments with minimal music, where silence or ambient sound does the work. After a big action sequence, give us a scene with just breathing, footsteps, wind. Let the absence of music create space for the emotional weight to sink in. Then, when the music comes back, it will hit even harder. Let's think about the pacing of Volume 2. If it follows the pattern of previous seasons, we're probably looking at 2 or 3 episodes after the Volume 1 cliffhanger. The first of these episodes would deal with immediate aftermath and regrouping. The second would involve planning and possibly a failed first attempt at defeating Vecna. The third would be the final battle and epilogue. That's a lot to pack in, but Stranger Things has shown it can handle complex plotting across multiple storylines. The key is balancing action with character moments. Too much action, and it becomes exhausting, numbing. Too much talking, and it loses momentum. The best episodes of Stranger Things have alternated between big set pieces and quiet scenes, giving the audience time to breathe while also keeping the tension high. Volume 2 needs to maintain that balance, giving us the spectacle we want while also delivering the emotional payoffs we need. There should be at least one sequence that's just terrifying, that reminds us this is a horror show at its core. Maybe it's a chase through the Upside Down, or a scene where someone's alone and being hunted by creatures, or a moment where Vecna gets into someone's head and we experience their nightmare. The show has always been willing to go dark, to create genuinely scary moments, and the final episodes should include that element, but there should also be moments of levity. Dustin making a joke at the worst possible time, Steve being accidentally funny, Erica delivering a cutting one-liner. These moments of humour don't undercut the drama, they enhance it by making the characters feel real and by giving the audience emotional variety. Life isn't just one tone, and neither should storytelling be. The relationship between tension and release is crucial. You build tension through music, through close-ups, through editing, through the accumulation of danger. Then you release it, either through action, through resolution, or through a tonal shift. Volume 2 should be a masterclass in this, constantly modulating the emotional experience so that viewers are engaged but not overwhelmed. Now let's consider some wildcard theories that probably won't happen, but are fun to think about. What if Volume 2 reveals that the entire series has been taking place inside someone's mind, that it's all been a psychic projection or a shared dream? It would be a controversial twist, the kind that would infuriate a lot of fans, but it would also recontextualize everything we've watched. Probably too risky for the Duffer Brothers to attempt, but it's an interesting thought experiment. Or what if there's a time loop element where our characters realise they've been through this before, that this isn't the first time Hawkins has faced the upside down threat. Maybe there have been previous loops where they failed, where the world ended, and someone with the ability to manipulate time has been resetting things, giving them another chance. That would explain some of the prophetic elements in the show, the way Will seems to sense things before they happen, the way Eleven sometimes knows things she shouldn't. Or what if Eleven isn't actually the most powerful being in the story? What if there's someone else, someone who's been watching and waiting, who only reveals themselves in the final hour when all seems lost? Maybe it's another survivor of the lab programs who's been living in hiding. Maybe it's an entity from the Upside Down that's not aligned with Vecna. Maybe it's something else entirely, something we couldn't have predicted. These twists would need to be foreshadowed properly to work. And honestly, the show has already laid enough groundwork for satisfying conclusions without needing to pull out shocking reveals. But it's worth thinking about how twists could enhance or damage the story, what the line is between a surprise that feels earned and one that feels cheap. The most important thing is that Volume 2 stays true to its characters. Whatever plot developments happen, they need to flow from character choices, not feel imposed by the needs of the narrative. When Eleven makes her final stand against Vecna, it should feel like the culmination of her entire journey. When the party comes together one last time, it should feel like the natural result of 5 seasons of friendship. When anyone makes a sacrifice, it should feel like something that character would actually do, not like the writers needed someone to die for dramatic effect. Character consistency is what separates good storytelling from great storytelling. We should be able to look at any decision a character makes and understand why they made it, based on everything we know about them. Mike's choices should reflect his loyalty and his romantic nature. Will's choices should reflect his sensitivity and his connection to the Upside Down. Lucas's choices should reflect his bravery and his love for Max, and so on for every character. This is especially important in emotional scenes. When characters express their feelings, the words they use should sound like them, not like a generic emotional speech. Dustin would express love differently than Mike would. Nancy would express fear differently than Robin would. These individual voices are what make the characters memorable, what make us care about them as more than just archetypes. Volume 2 should give each major character at least one scene that encapsulates who they are, that shows us why they matter to the story. Not in a heavy-handed way, not with big speeches about their role or importance, but through actions and choices that reveal character. Show us Steve being selfless. Show us Robin being brilliantly weird. Show us Erica being tough and smart. Show us Murray being paranoid but right. Show us Joyce being a fierce mother. Show us Hopper being protective and loving. These character-defining moments don't have to be in the middle of action. Some of the best ones could be quiet, two people talking, a moment of reflection before or after the chaos. Maybe it's Eleven and Hopper sitting together, not even speaking, just being father and daughter. Maybe it's the party around a table, planning or reminiscing, or just existing in each other's presence. These moments of humanity are what we'll remember long after we've forgotten the specifics of the plot. And speaking of what we'll remember, Volume 2 needs to give us at least a few instantly iconic moments, images or scenes that will be gifted and quoted and referenced for years to come. Every season has had these. The Christmas lights spelling out messages. Eleven crushing the Demogorgon, Bob's death, Hopper's letter, the snowball, Max running up that hill. These moments transcend the show and become part of pop culture. What will Volume 2's iconic moments be? Maybe it's the final shot of the party together. Maybe it's a particular line of dialogue that perfectly encapsulates the themes. Maybe it's a visual of the upside down closing, or Eleven at full power, or everyone standing together ready to fight. Maybe it's something quieter, more intimate, that resonates because of its emotional honesty rather than its spectacle. The ending shot of the entire series deserves special consideration. It's the last image viewers will have, the final statement the show makes. It should be meaningful but not overly sentimental. It should provide closure but also suggest continuation, the idea that life goes on beyond where we stop watching. Maybe it's literally a door closing. Maybe it's the sun rising over Hawkins. Maybe it's a character walking away from the camera into their future. Maybe it's the party's hands stacked together, like they do before a plan. Whatever it is, it needs to feel right, needs to give us that sense of completion while also breaking our hearts a little because it's over. Let's think about what we want to feel when Volume 2 ends. Satisfied, certainly. The story should feel complete, not like there are major threads left dangling, but also bittersweet because we're saying goodbye to characters and a world we've loved. Also hopeful because Stranger Things has always been fundamentally optimistic despite its dark elements. And maybe a little sad, not because of the story's ending, but because our time with these characters is over. The best endings make you want to immediately re-watch from the beginning, to experience the journey again with the knowledge of where it all leads. Volume 2 should do that, should recontextualize earlier seasons in interesting ways. Maybe there are lines or moments from Season 1 that take on new meaning once we know how it all ends. Maybe there are character arcs that we didn't fully appreciate until we saw them through to completion. And then there's the question of legacy. What will Stranger Things be remembered for? The 80s nostalgia, certainly. The performances, especially the young cast who've grown up before our eyes. The music, the horror elements. But hopefully, most of all, it will be remembered for its heart, for being a show about friendship and love and the power of human connection in the face of darkness. That's the real story. The one that transcends the supernatural elements and speaks to universal human experiences. Volume 2 needs to hammer that home, needs to make it absolutely clear that this is what the show has always been about. The monsters are scary, yes, but they're ultimately just obstacles. The real story is about the relationships between the characters, about how they help each other grow and survive and become better versions of themselves. If the final episodes lose sight of that in favour of spectacle, they'll feel hollow, no matter how well executed the action is. So in the end, what do we want from Volume 2? We want resolution, we want emotion, we want at least a few surprises. We want to see our favourite characters tested and triumphing. We want to feel scared and excited and moved. We want the ending to feel earned, to feel like the natural conclusion to everything that's come before. We want to laugh and cry and sit in stunned silence at least once. We want to feel like our investment in this story over all these years has paid off. And beyond all that, we want to be able to let go, to finish the show and feel like it's okay that it's over, that it told the story it needed to tell and ended at the right time. Not every show manages that. Some overstay their welcome, dragging on past the point where they have anything interesting to say. Stranger Things has the opportunity to end on a high note, to be remembered as a complete and satisfying piece of storytelling. The Duffer Brothers have earned our trust over the course of the series. They've shown they know these characters, this world, this story. They've delivered consistently strong seasons with memorable moments and genuine emotional depth. There's every reason to believe they'll stick the landing, that Volume 2 will give us what we need even if it's not exactly what we predicted or expected. So as you drift off now, think about all these possibilities, all these threads waiting to be resolved. Think about Eleven standing up to Vecna one final time. Think about Mike and Will and Lucas and Dustin and Erica and Max facing impossible odds together. Think about Hopper and Joyce finally getting their peace. Think about Nancy finding her truth. Think about Steve protecting his kids one more time. Think about Robin being her authentic self. Think about Murray being vindicated. Think about all of them, separately and together, flawed and heroic and human. Think about Hawkins, scarred but surviving. A small town that faced the end of the world and said no. Think about the Upside Down finally closing, its hold on reality severed. Think about gates sealed and monsters defeated, and a new day dawning. Think about grief processed and trauma healing and love winning. Think about endings that are also beginnings, about saying goodbye while also acknowledging that the connections forged in fire don't break just because the story ends. And no, that soon, very soon, we'll find out how it really concludes, how the Duffer Brothers choose to bring this journey to its end. Until then, rest easy. Let these theories and possibilities wash over you like waves, gentle and endless. Dream of Hawkins, dream of friendship that transcends dimension and death. Dream of ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply because it's right. Dream of 11 free and happy. Dream of the party together forever in the ways that matter. Dream of hope triumphant over fear, of light-piercing darkness, of stories that end well because the people in them refuse to give up. Sweet dreams, friends. May your sleep be peaceful and your dreams be filled with the best possible versions of how this story ends. Good night.